All right, let's move over to the defense, fellas, and talk about that side of the ball. And this is the best. Like, there's some aspects of the Louisville defense that have been good, but parts that are struggling. There's been aspects of the Notre Dame offense that have been good, parts that are struggling. This is the good on good side. This is the good on good matchup. The best thing Louisville has going for it is their offense. The best thing Notre Dame has going for it is their defense. This is going to be in my opinion, as long as Notre Dame comes to play, and that energy that you guys are talking about and that fire that you're talking about, which I think that they will. I mean, for all the issues we talk about how Notre Dame didn't show up or was flat against Louisville last year, we should probably be more clear on that. It was the offense that was that way. The Notre Dame defense gave up that first opening drive touchdown and then shut Louisville down after that. It wasn't until Notre Dame started handing them short fields that Louisville was really able to break that game open. So I expect a little bit of a chip on the shoulder of this unit on Saturday, to be honest with you. They are a bit of a beat-up unit in certain areas, but they're going to come out here, and this is going to be a huge, huge matchup. There's 4 keys that we look at to this Notre Dame defense thriving against Louisville, and this is going to be the key. I mean, honestly, yes, your offense needs to get going, but you can't come out here and just let Louisville go up and down the field on you. You can't. So what are the keys to making that happen? The first one, and we'll start up front, the first one is, yes, there's a lot of different aspects of playing well on the defensive line. Right? There's, get after the tackles and all that kind of stuff. But the big thing for me is limiting the run game. And the way you limit the run game and make Louisville one-dimensional is you've got to dominate up the middle. I don't love their tackles. They're solid. Monroe Mills has been solid this year. The kid from Yale's, okay. They're not bad there. I think you can really take advantage with your athleticism at linebacker and on the defensive line up the middle against this defense. And the key to stopping Louisville, to me, is make them a one-dimensional offense. Their offense thrives. Their pass game thrives when they get their running game going. Jeff Brom showed that last year. If you can make this a game where it's about your ability to pass pro for your quarterback and your ability to consistently get open against this secondary, I don't know if that bodes well for Louisville. In a lot of second and longs and third and longs, they're going to come out and try to establish some balance, create some big play opportunities in the passing game. So the reason I say dominate the interior, not so much, stop the run, is because I think dominating the interior leads to success in all those areas. I think it leads to shutting down the run game. I think it also gets into not letting Tyler Shuck get at all comfortable sitting in the pocket in this game. So I think those two things kind of go hand in hand, fellas. It's not often you have an interior that dominates the run and then does nothing in the pass game. It usually kind of goes hand in hand with this Al Golden defense. So for me, you've got to be able to control this game up the middle. If you can do that with your defensive line, then, and I'm going to talk about the middle a couple different times in these keys, but I wanted to start with the ability to come out and win this battle right up the middle. That's going to be huge in this game, Ryan.
Louisville took your heart last year, man. I mean, they ran right down your throat all game. Like, let's be honest with ourselves, right? Howard Cross had a really good season last year. Riley Mills had some good football games last year. They were one of the strongest parts of your team, but against Louisville, I mean, they ran at will on you. It didn't matter what running back was in the game either. Like, it was disheartening to watch that football game last year. If there is any emotion, desire, fire, whatever word you want to use with Howard Cross and Riley Mills, like, this is the game to show it, man. It's very easy. I hope that they watched the game last year a couple times this week where you're just like, guys, number 25 and then Garendo. I don't even remember what number Garendo wore last year. They ran down your throat, dude. Like, you had no soul in that football game. And if you have any pride, like you said, Brian, like, Notre Dame's interior defensive line needs to play a better football game. Like, they do, because you on paper, and I feel like I talk about on paper a lot with this football team, you have the advantage. Howard Cross is a better football player than any Louisville offensive lineman that they have. Riley Mills is a more talented football player than any Louisville offensive lineman they have. Jason Onye is a more talented football player than any Louisville offensive lineman you have. You have the obvious advantage. They didn't win last year because you didn't have the talent advantage, though. They won it because they wanted it more than you, ultimately, right? They clowned you. They dogged you. And this is a game where you're at your home stadium. You basically, in my opinion, took a little bit of a week off last week because it was just kind of like going through the motions and winning a football game. It didn't look very fiery to me at all against Miami, Ohio, at all. So if you were saving yourself for this game, you better come out and do it, man. Ultimately, like that has to be a reality that comes. We are going to know the outcome of this football game by looking at the impact that guys like Howard Cross and Riley Mills have on this game. Because I'm here to tell you, man, I am not impressed by that Louisville running game on film. I'm not. I think that it was kind of bolstered a little bit by playing a couple bad football teams before Georgia Tech. Against Georgia Tech, I did not like it at all. I don't think the running back room is especially strong, and I think the offensive line is a pretty average unit overall. But at the end of the day, we can analyze this on paper, that on paper. You don't win football games on paper, man. You just don't. And if you have any pride in what happened last year, the interior defensive line, the defensive line in whole is going to come out and is going to dominate this football game. That honestly is the biggest key to the game, in my opinion, on either side of the football, whether that you're going to dominate that front.
I think it also includes the linebackers, Ryan, because the way Notre Dame schemes their defense, part of dominating up the middle is your linebackers have to play at a high level. And pass rush wise, run game wise, it's been inconsistent. It's not just the young guys either. Of course, they're having their young guy mistakes. It's Jack Kaiser also has to play with a lot more physicality coming downhill and blowing things up. So I think I agree with everything you said about the defensive line, but it can't just be them. The linebackers also have to play a much more aggressive and sound game this week, because that's a concern that I have too, Trevor, is it's not just, okay, your D-line played great, but if you're getting a lot of bad run fits or slow run fits, or I'm not sure if this is my gap run fits from the Notre Dame linebacking core, then all of a sudden your D-line does their job, but the cutback lane is open because your linebackers didn't do their job. I think that's another piece to this ability to really control and dominate the middle of the line of scrimmage.
The linebackers need to prove that they're going to be present at all times, because a common theme throughout the year so far has been, I'll be texting about it with somebody, or we'll be watching the game on TV. It's like, oh, hey, there's Drake Bowen. There he is blowing up a play. Or, hey, there's Jaden Ausberry. It has to be consistent. And that's going to be a word that I'm going to use a lot to explain the game this week, because it's going to be about consistently fitting those run fits. For when the D-line does their job, you have to start working cohesively as a unit.
I'm going to bring this up more in the bye week. I am curious if the way that they rotate their linebackers is something that is leading to maybe the lack of consistency at linebacker, is not getting into the flow. And if it's something where they need to adjust their rotation, or if it's something that as they play more in it, they get better at it. It's going to be an interesting bye-week conversation next week, because you've got these talented linebackers. You've got to use them, but you've got to use them in a way that allows them to kind of get into the flow of the game. And I think that's something about too. Like, J.D. Bertrand, by the time you get in the middle of the second quarter, he's played 90% of the snaps. You get in the late second quarter and Drake Bowen's your middle linebacker, and he's played maybe half the snaps. Like, I think that can factor in. So that's something we'll discuss more next week. But for this game, the linebackers have to play well. Part number 2, we're going to stick with the middle part. We're going to get that number 3, guys. So just from what I sent you guys pre-show, I'm flipping 1 and 3. Okay, just so you guys understand that. Number 2, another big key, and this is a bigger picture key of this game. Louisville is going to do a lot to you that puts you in some binds. They're not a gimmicky offense. They're a creative offense, and there's a difference. They're going to come out with a lot of different motions and shifts. They're going to line up at times in what looks like an old school 21 personnel look, with a tight end attached and another tight end that's lined as like a strong side fullback. And if you think that's a guaranteed they're going to run power right at you look, you're going to get beat for a big pass play, because they will do things out of that to get creative with you. They will do things that are going to try to create isolations with crossers and overs. You have to be disciplined seeing them, closing on them. We saw this last week. Chris Bell had over 80 yards on 2 catches. I don't think either one of his catches, guys, was much more than 5 yards down the field. I think they were both short throws.
It was a mesh and a short crosser, right? Like, that's
right.
all it was, I think.
Right.
So, yeah.
And the first one, a guy comes downhill, takes a bad angle, misses him in space. The second one, they don't handle what Louisville's doing at him. And next thing you know, 2 little easy throws by your quarterback go for 80+ yards. Now, my first response to that is, hey, Notre Dame offensive coaches, maybe you might want to watch that a little bit and see that how crossers and meshes and levels can impact your offense. Beyond that, for this particular game, you've got to be disciplined. We saw a play against Purdue where they ran a crossing concept and there was a miscommunication between Kingston and Jack Kaiser, and it allowed the tight end to come open for a 12-yard gain. Fortunately for Notre Dame, it got called back because of a penalty. You can't assume that's going to happen again in this game. They're going to do things with post-snap switches. They're going to run a lot of post-corner routes, double moves. Their receivers are pretty good top-end route runners. They're going to do a lot of things that put you in mental binds where you've got to make quick, smart decisions, and that's going to be something that you have to do. If you're not disciplined in this game, here's the problem, guys. When you make an assignment mistake against Louisville, it can turn a 5-yard throw into a 50-yard gain. It can turn a receiver coming free for a big play down the field. It can mean Tyler Shuck is running free on a pass rush where you lost gap contain, and he runs through and runs for 15 yards on 3rd and 10. This is the type of talent on offense that Notre Dame hasn't faced this year, that when you make mistakes, it can cost you big. So being disciplined, assignment correct, and playing fast is incredibly important in this game, Trevor. And if they're not able to play that way, they will stop 40, stop 50, and that's going to get you beat in this type of game. So discipline is going to be huge in this game.
Discipline's going to be massive. I agree 100%. And to go along with that, I think tackling discipline is something that needs to be touched on as well, because you're going to be put in a lot of scenarios where you're going to be in one-on-one situations. We talked about it a lot yesterday. Louisville is going to do a lot to get your linebackers and your safeties chasing. Ryan knows on the post-game show, I gave a lot of praise to Jordan Clark for his ability to tackle in space and his open field tackling. I think that's going to be put to the test on Saturday. And another thing that I will add to be disciplined here, 100% stay disciplined within the whistle. Also stay disciplined outside of the whistle. If this is going to be the emotional game that we think that it's going to be smart. We saw last week what happens and how much it kills momentum when you get a bonehead penalty like that. So I think that should be thrown under the umbrella of be disciplined. But yes, Brian, I agree with you 100%. Stay disciplined in your matchups. Don't get lulled to sleep, because Louisville has a big playability offense, and I think they might look to take advantage of that on Saturday for sure.
I like that you mentioned the tackle discipline, because that's actually what I was going to roll into, Trevor, because I said that I think the biggest key for the Notre Dame defense is how well the defensive line performs and kind of has a little bit of a payback bang from last year. My biggest worry of this game is exactly what you said, because this team is Louisville is a team that has a lot of athletes, right? Like, forget about the running backs for a second. That Chris Bell kid at 6'2", 220 can move. Like, that is a really good athlete. Ja'Cory Brooks was at the University of Alabama for a reason, right? If Colin Lacey plays, then Colin Lacey's a talented athlete. Jamari Johnson, the technically second string tight end, that kid's an athlete, man. I do not want to see him in open space.
Is that 11, Ryan?
Yeah, he's an interesting cat. He's only a redshirt freshman. So they have kids that can kill you, decimate you in space. And it's my biggest worry, because if any of those wide receivers was just one-on-one, you got to run a route against Benjamin Morrison, you got to run a route against Christian Gray, you got to run a route against any of the defensive backs, pretty much, Xavier Watts, whatever. I like Notre Dame's chances all day to win that assignment. But one thing that we have seen from the secondary, which is, I don't want to call it the Achilles heel, because it doesn't pop up all the time, but Benjamin Morrison has had inconsistencies in the past as a tackler. Christian Gray is a true sophomore. That is going to be there at times. Bad angles, miss a tackle, all those types of things. Adon Schuler, sometimes coming a little bit out of control, miss a tackle. Xavier Watts has had issues, well, at least last year, with taking bad angles of pursuit at time, right? So ultimately, this team can cover as well as any secondary in college football, in my opinion. But I am worried about the second chance opportunities, right? The yak opportunities. Get Chris Bell down in space. Because like you said, Brian, if that kid takes a better angle and doesn't slip off, Chris Bell's tackled for a 4-yard gain instead of a 40-yard gain, right? So keeping this team in front of you, tackling well in space, Jeff Brom's a very smart coach, obviously, but he's also very smart in the simple fact of he knows he has athletes. Get them out in space. Jamari Johnson, we're just running a screen to you, right? Like, it's almost like just a cross screen. We're going to run mesh. We're going to get guys in space. It's not complicated stuff, but it's complicated in the sense of that he knows he has it, so he's going to utilize it, right, ultimately, and give you different looks doing it. So Notre Dame needs to tackle well in space from a secondary perspective, linebacker perspective. They cannot have many missed tackles because this is the type of team with the athletes they have, with Bell, with Lacey, potentially if he's there, Brooks, Johnson. This is a team that will make you pay for missed tackles in space.
There's another aspect of this game too, fellas, is Jeff Brom has never been a coach that's afraid to attack the middle of the field. And he's going to do it a lot of different ways on every single level. We're going to see crossers. We're going to see option routes. We're going to see Trevor, I think it was you broke down the play on Tuesday where they had the delay with the tight end and it was a screen and they're going to hit deep in cuts, post routes, over routes. That has been an area where at times Notre Dame has been vulnerable this season, guys. We have seen, I think of the in cut that Xavier Watts got beat on last week. Early in the game, I felt like a linebacker didn't look up a route and it went over the middle. I think of the Texas A&M game where the first pass play of the game they hit was, a receiver getting behind a rolling down safety. You think of the seam throw for the 83-yard touchdown against Northern Illinois where there was a miscommunication between – not miscommunication, two misplays on the ball by Benjamin Morrison and Kingston Viliama-Asa. There's been a lot of opportunities for teams to attack Notre Dame over the middle of the field. That plays right into Jeff Brom's game planning wheelhouse. He is not a coach that's afraid to do that when he has a quarterback that can make those kind of throws. I don't know that I would have wanted to throw the ball over the middle of the field a whole lot last year with Jack Plummer. I have no qualms and no quarrels with doing that now with Tyler Shuck, and we've seen that on film. So that's an area where the linebackers are going to have to be really disciplined, handling the crossers, handling the stuff that's short. They're going to have to do a much better job looking up those more intermediate in cuts, over routes that they haven't done as great of a job of. At times they've been okay. They got to be more consistent. And then the safeties have to be better with leverage and just not giving up easy routes and easy catches like they did last week. Actually, like they've really done all season. At times, most teams they've played haven't been able to protect the quarterback long enough to get those throws off, or they haven't had the quarterback or receivers that can get open in time. Louisville does at receiver and at tight end and at running back. And so defending the middle of the field from a pass game standpoint is also going to be a key to this game, because if you force Louisville to throw the ball more to the outside, the routes that Louisville runs to do that take a lot longer to develop. The post corners, the burst corners, the deeper routes. And I don't know that Tyler Shuck can consistently have the time to get those throws off. So this is going to be a key to this game as well, Ryan, is being able to handle the over-the-middle passing game on all three levels is going to be a real big key to shutting down, or at least slowing. I don't know about completely like dominating, but slowing down this Louisville offense to the point where you can make some stops in this game.
I think you just need to make everything difficult, right? Like, just don't make anything easy. I mean, there's a difference between separation and easy separation, right? Easy separation is just rocking into a slant because you're working against off-man coverage. I would hope, and I have a feeling we're probably going to see, but this is just speculation on my part. Notre Dame is a heavy man system, but that man doesn't always mean press man, obviously, right? Like there's variations of man. So there could be some guys that are just working in off coverage, in man coverage. I hope that this is a game where they say, we know the wide receivers are good, but we also know that they want to create a lot of stuff underneath. So we're going to go a lot of press across the board, and we're going to try to not only make this team fight for leverage, but also make creating separation harder on this team, right? Like, I want everything to be difficult. If Mark Redmond catches a pass in this football game, they're starting tight ends, I want it to have to be a catch through traffic. If Chris Bell catches a mesh, I want it to be a mesh where there's a guy that's hanging on his back hip. Like, I want those types of hard completions. Like, don't make things easy. If you make this wide receiver core have easy separation or easy opportunities, then that's more opportunity for them to make you look silly in space. So that, yeah, obviously that works in the middle of the field, but it extends everywhere, in my opinion. Like, I just really think that you need to make everything as hard as possible against this type of offense.
I agree. One thing that they started doing a lot too between the Purdue and Miami of Ohio game that I've noticed is they start to roll Xavier Watts down into the box a little bit at the start of the play, which I really like. And I think that can set him up for almost a little bit of a robber play to step back and cover the middle of the field for especially what Louisville is going to try to do to attack the middle of the field on Saturday. So I agree with you, Ryan. There's not much on my end to add, but Ryan, to your point, protecting the middle of the field is going to be huge, because if I'm Jeff Brom, my game plan is not to consistently attack Benjamin Morrison and Christian Gray and hope that my guys are better than their guys.
Oh yeah, I mean, look, if you're trying to have a cohesive passing attack against Notre Dame, your idea isn't I'm going to throw it 20 all day, right? Like it's not. It's also not I'm going to throw it 29 all day. It's I'm going to try to get a linebacker isolated 1-on-1. I'm going to try to make him have a blown assignment in the passing game. Like those things are much more advantageous for not only Louisville but every team to be. Because most teams just aren't like, oh man, I have an outside vertical against Benjamin Morrison 1-on-1. Gonna take that. Like that's not how smart coaches work, right? And Jeff Brom is obviously a much smarter coach than that.
They will take some of those shots, but it's not going to be where your bread and butter is. And sometimes you're taking those shots to, okay, if we can catch one, we can catch one, but I'm also trying to set something else up, where I'm saying, hey, look, if that was close, maybe you might want to get your safety over there. And the next time we kind of look at that route, we're bringing a, deep crosser or something like that over to try to set that up. So there's always some strategery to that as well, a little bit. Guys, the last point we can kind of just get out because I feel like we've already discussed it. We've talked a lot about it. Limit big plays. Like everything we've all talked about, all tackle well, be disciplined, control the middle. All these things have led to what? Limit the big plays. Look, as good as this pass defense is, I'm going to be shocked if Louisville doesn't hit a couple big plays in this game. Shocked. I don't know how you keep this team completely down for 4 quarters. But what you need to do is limit them. And you need to especially limit the big plays in the run game. Because you know what they did last year? They did limit the big plays in the pass game. Louisville threw for 145 yards last year in this game. And it's not because of lack of effort. They tried to throw the ball more than that. It's just they couldn't do it against that Notre Dame secondary. This is a better Louisville receiving core, in my opinion. This is a better Louisville quarterback, in my opinion. They're going to get some plays there. The key is not then letting them also get those big plays in the run game. And I think that's something that Georgia Tech did a really good job with last week. And that's why, for a while there, Georgia Tech kept this a game if it wasn't for 2 of their own big mistakes with the turnover on offense, the fumble. I guess it was considered a fumble, the backwards pass that they recovered in the end zone, and then the blocked field goal they ran back for a touchdown. That's what broke that game open. But part of the reason Georgia Tech was able to keep the points down a little bit early is, they gave up a couple big plays in the pass game, but they shut down the run game. But what ultimately did them in is they gave up too many big plays in the pass game. And they gave up big plays in the pass game because of some mistakes. Like when Ja'Cory Brooks just outplays you for a ball on a corner route early in the game, hey, you just tip your cap. That's a heck of a play. You having 2 mistakes, either a tackle mistake or a coverage mistake that lets 2 crossing routes go for 80 yards, that's the stuff you have to eliminate. That's the stuff you can't do. So, I think we kind of covered that with everything we talked about. Limiting big plays is key. Last things that you guys have about the defense before we go to our predictions part of the show?
No, I think it's just, I think it's going to come down to winning one-on-one matchups, but more than just winning one-on-one matchups defensively, I think you have to make sure that they stay one-on-one matchups, right? Like that's what Jeff Brom is so good at, is that he's so good with his movement-based passing attack and his movement-based running game that he makes it cloudy what's a one-on-one matchup anymore, right? Like him running mesh, that's not a one-on-one matchup anymore. That's where communication has to come in. But like when you have you saw, I know Brian, I know you, and I'm sure Trevor, you saw this too, but like that crazy adjustment that Ja'Cory Brooks had against Georgia Tech where he like spun around twice. I was just like, what the heck? But like ultimately he's an athlete and he made a play,
pass
right?
interference, and you're like, how did he stay in bounds? Number one. And number 2, how the heck did he spin around and track the ball? Like that was an insane play.
And in those types of situations, Notre Dame needs to win those reps, right? Like you can't lose those types of great craziness, right? So when Notre Dame has one-on-ones, they have opportunities to have those one-on-ones on both sides of the football. I think they have to make those plays. I think that's honestly who wins this game, is who makes more one-on-one matchup dictated plays, because Notre Dame's going to win some where it's a little bit cloudy. Louisville's going to win some where it's cloudy. But when you have a Jeremiah Love against a running back, when you have a Ja'Cory Brooks versus Christian Gray or whoever else is going to play corner, when you have whoever, it's really going to come down who wins those individual matchups in the end.
Don't be afraid to come downhill and play fast. One thing that we heard a lot about this Notre Dame's defense is they are faster than last year's, but so far throughout this year, it has been a little passive. Sometimes it feels like the linebackers, defensive line, they're absorbing tackles. They're waiting for things to come to them. And I think I can confidently say I do think that a Drake Bowen and a Jaden Osbury and a Jalen Snead are faster than a J.D. Bertrand. And that's no knock to J.D. He was fantastic. But what he did do is he played with a lot of aggression. He came downhill, so he played fast. I think if Notre Dame's defense can start to unlock that a little bit, they're going to be fine.
It's really nice to see some Louisville fans in the chat. I knew basketball season's not here yet, so that's cool.